So Eddie Hearn's been a busy boy today. Been doing the rounds at the Cheeseman Garcia press conference, discussing obviously the situation currently with the heavyweight division. So the names that came up were your usual suspects. We had Wilder, Fury, and Dillian White. The Dillian White situation is an interesting one. I'll talk about that separately. But more so than the Fury situation, because that was kind of black and white, where he mentioned offers have been made to Fury, and there's not really been uh, there's been a slight interest, is what I took away from what he was saying, but nothing of note. He did mention that the two most likely fighters to face Joshua in April are Fury and Dillian White, but again, he wasn't really very convincing with that. What I really want to talk about is the situation with Deontay Wilder. So, a couple of years ago, it felt like the general consensus amongst boxing fanatics like myself was that Wilder wasn't necessarily just ducking Anthony Joshua. He was kind of admitting that he wasn't ready to step up and fight Anthony Joshua. That changed, I'd say, probably a year and a half ago, when Deontay Wilder became a lot more vocal with his pursuit of Anthony Joshua, saying that he can or would knock him out if they were to fight, and kind of openly calling out Anthony Joshua for a fight. Now, I'd say around the time Anthony Joshua fought Povetkin, and they were unable to agree a deal to fight Wilder, around that sort of time, there was a slight shift in opinion amongst the boxing community on social media, YouTube, Twitter, etc. I'd say there was a feeling that Joshua, or Team Joshua, didn't try their utmost to get that fight to happen. And the fact that it felt like they were playing hardball wasn't conducive to the best fighting the best. And there was a bit of frustration amongst boxing fans for that. And for some reason, it kind of, the blame kind of fell on Joshua as opposed to both of them, just amongst kind of people on social media, is what I'm talking about, just the general consensus. Now, that shift continued when Wilder and Fury got announced, and how both Wilder and Fury openly said Joshua didn't really want to fight the best, and he was effectively a paper champion. That shift continued on into the mainstream media in the States, from what I saw sitting in the UK. So I consume a lot of podcasts and content on YouTube and things of that nature. And people away from the kind of hardcore boxing community on YouTube, people such as Joe Rogan, Chael Sonnen, who's a mixed martial artist who puts out a lot of content on YouTube. These guys were basically saying that Joshua's ducking Wilder, and that was a product of the fact that Fury's and Wilder's voices were being heard the loudest over in the States. Because I'm quite sad, and I sit around watching and listening to a lot of these opinions and interviews and videos. Personally, I didn't think that was quite fair. I like to take the side of logic and just buy the stuff that I've personally consumed. I I can follow Eddie Hearn's side of the story in terms of the way he lays it out, what he says. It kind of all adds up and makes sense. Now, I personally don't have a horse in the race. I'm not kind of Team Joshua or Team Wilder. I'm just a fan of boxing and combat sports in general, really. And I just want to see the best fighters fight the best fighters when they're in their prime. I'd hate for this to turn into a situation like Mayweather and Pacquiao did, where the fight happened 5 or 6 years too late. Now, going back to Wilder and Joshua, Eddie Hearn today was a bit more offensive in the words he used and the way he spoke about the situation. So he was very vocal in the initial negotiations between himself and Shelley Finkel, who's Deontay Wilder's manager. And he was very vocal during the first round of negotiations when Shelley Finkel made this $50 million proposal, or try to make a deal where Joshua would get paid $50 million via Deontay Wilder's personal email account. And that kind of tipped the scales in Wilder's favour amongst boxing fans, where they were just saying, well, if they're offering you 50 million, take the money and do the fight. So Eddie Hearn today kind of he's alluded to this previously, but he was a bit more aggressive in the words that he used by basically saying that he responded to that email saying he'd like to have a meeting or he'd like to draft contract, and he never got a response. And to add to that, he mentioned how he'd emailed Shelley Finkel 6 times, I think he said, with an initial offer and then improvements on top of that, and he hasn't had a response. Now, that's a little bit alarming to me, because even if these offers are derisory, which is a word that's used quite a lot, even if these offers aren't to the standard that Wilder's team would expect, if you're genuine and you genuinely want this fight, logic would tell me that you'd respond. Even if you're going to respond and say, shut the fuck up, that's a pointless email you've just sent me, because you know that offer's way too low. Even if it's just to say that, to not respond at all, to effectively close all lines of communication, kind of doesn't, for me, put Wilder or Team Wilder in a positive light. The whole situation right now is quite political, because what you've got is you've got two camps kind of telling different stories, and then you've got fans of both camps kind of backing up those stories, and you've got people squabbling online. But that basically doesn't get us any closer to getting the fight made, which is what I think actual boxing fans, as opposed to fans of these two individuals, want. So going back to the interviews that Eddie Hearn done today, I think it was important for him to be a bit more aggressive in the public kind of forum, to let people know that he's actually trying to get this fight made, and it's the other side that aren't playing ball. One thing that really frustrates me about this whole situation, especially this $50 million offer, Eddie Hearn has kind of always said that this offer was fake because they didn't want to discuss it with me. Once they made the offer, they didn't want to have a meeting with me and talk about it with me. But the thing that frustrates me about that is when Shelley Finkel and Lou DiBella have been interviewed, no one seems to press them about this. No one seems to say, Eddie saying that he tried to have a meeting with you about this, he wanted some more details about this offer. why didn't you sit down with him? If you were serious about making this fight, if you wanted to make this fight, why didn't you talk to him about it? Why was it just this blanket offer of $50 million and you have 48 hours or 24 hours or whatever it was to accept it? When there's so much money on the line, and if you're serious about giving another party that money for a fight, if the other party come back to you and say, yeah, we're interested, let's talk about it, logic would tell me that if you're serious, you'd say, yeah, sure, let's have a meeting, these are the terms, do you agree, yes or no? So that has always left a bad taste in my mouth, from a Team Wilder point of view. Now, looking forward to April, it feels like Eddie's kind of at the end of his tether. He's throwing the gauntlet down. He's saying to both, to Wilder himself and also Shelley Finkel, he's putting it out there in the open. He's not discussed the actual terms. He's not discussed numbers. He's not discussed percentages. All he's basically said is, I'm trying to get this done. I'm trying to talk to these guys, but they're not responding. And I really hope when this news travels across the pond, someone like the Boxing Voice or whoever it is, someone picks this up with Shelley or Wilder himself or Lou DiBella and actually quizzes them on this. Why aren't they sitting down at the table? Why aren't they trying to get this fight made? If their response is, we want to fight Tyson Fury because the last fight was inconclusive, to me, on one level, yeah, it makes sense. But if you're confident that you're the best fighter in the world, and your mantra of one face, one name, one champion to rule the heavyweight division is what you actually believe in, this is your opportunity. Take it. To kind of end, the last kind of point that I want to make is, from what it seems like, the offers that are going out to Wilder are basically monetary value. It's the most money he's ever going to make in a single fight, and probably ever will make. It kind of annoys me when people during a negotiation are more fixated on what percentage am I getting rather than how much am I getting, if that makes sense. It's, if you're getting, I don't know, for example, 35% of the total revenue of a fight, and that 35% is 3 or 4 times more than you've ever made for a fight, then why do you need to argue the case that, oh no, we need to have 45%, we need to have 40%? Does that make sense? What I'm basically trying to say is, they're giving you, or they're offering you, the most money you're ever going to make for a single fight. Along with that, from a sporting point of view, you're getting the opportunity to fight in front of, between 90 and 100,000 fans in one of the most famous stadiums in the world, in an atmosphere that you've never experienced during one of your fights. Because let's face it, the only time Wilder's fought in an arena with an atmosphere was when he fought Fury, and that was because of the travelling British fans. It would literally be the biggest heavyweight fight of this generation, and if you genuinely believe that you're good enough to win that fight, why wouldn't you take it? You'd literally be the king of the division after that, if you think you're good enough to win the fight. So when we talk about ducking, when we talk about who actually wants this fight and who actually doesn't, and I don't know if I said this earlier on in the video, but I personally always take what these promoters say with a pinch of salt. But on this occasion, everything Eddie Hearn has said today and previously adds up and makes sense to me. The disjointed communication coming from Team Wilder, and it's probably because there's 3 people with three different agendas: Lou DiBella, Shelley Finkel, and Deontay Wilder, kind of coming out and talking individually. But the message they're putting across isn't a unified message. So what that tells me is it doesn't make sense to me what they're actually saying, what they're actually after, because on one hand they're saying they want the fight, that AJ is ducking them, etc. And on the other hand, Wilder's saying, oh no, now we're going to freeze Anthony Joshua out and we're going to fight Fury. AJ's irrelevant. He's not irrelevant because he's got 3 of the 4 belts in the division. He's the number 1 guy, like it or lump it. And if you want to be, not just call yourself the best heavyweight in division, if you want to be universally known as the best in division, you've got to go and get those 3 belts off him. And it seems like they've been given a great opportunity to do that. And the fact that they're not responding to these emails or they're not negotiating, it kind of tells me everything I need to know at this stage. I don't feel like they actually want the fight, and it's a shame really, because this could be the start of, or kind of, we're already in a great kind of position in the heavyweight division, but that fight, Joshua vs Wilder, could be the catalyst of an amazing era for the heavyweight division. But we need them two to get in the ring together. And at this stage, to me at least, it seems like the only side stopping that from happening is Wilder's. I hope that makes sense. It's the first video I've ever done, so feel free to comment and share, etc. And I'll try and kind of respond to any comments below that actually makes sense. If you're just going to talk crap, then I'll just have to give you a thumbs down. I don't even know if you can do that on YouTube, but yeah, see you guys later.